All right, this is lesson 9.1. Here's the difficulty with this. If you were to go into Canada or Mexico or anywhere in South America or anywhere in Europe, this lesson would be like, they'd be like, why are we learning this? It's so easy. You know why? Why would they think this is so simple? India, right? They're why?
Because the whole world besides America.
Yeah. Right. The whole world is in the metric system, just except the United States. And so, we're just not used to grams. We're used to pounds or ounces. We're not used to liters. We know cups and gallons and ounces and quarts. I think that if we could, as a country, go back in time and just go with the rest of the world on this and do the metric system, we would. And they are trying to teach kids about the metric system so that one day maybe we'll switch over. The problem is that people that are old like me, I don't have any idea how many kilograms I weigh, but I know exactly how many pounds I weigh. And I don't really care that the rest of the world knows how many kilograms they weigh. I know how many pounds I weigh. And so people like me don't really care that the rest of the world uses the metric system. And so we never really learned it, and so then why would we want to all have to learn something when we're doing just fine without it? The problem is that whenever you do interact with other countries, which we do all the time, we now have to convert things. We have to have, did you know that people that work on cars have two sets of tools? Two sets of socket wrenches or little crescent wrenches. You know why? Because American-made cars, Ford, GM, any of those cars, they all have like inch or half inch or 3/8 of an inch or 15/16 of an inch stuff. They all deal with inches. And then every other foreign car, all the other foreign cars, the German-made cars, the British cars, the Japanese cars, the Korean cars, all of them use the metric system, millimeters, centimeters. So they have to have two sets of tools. I mean, isn't that so weird and lame? I mean, it's made a mess. But we don't care. We're going to stick with our plan. We're going to stick with the customary system, right? Inches and feet. We don't worry about meters and centimeters. In school, we're trying to teach you how to do this stuff and what is the metric system, because the whole rest of the world uses it except for us. Make sense? That's why we're teaching you this. Is this something that you have to know for, maybe not, I don't know. But we want, the United States wants kids to know this stuff so that it's not completely foreign to us when we do have to deal with it in the real world. Okay? Anyway, here's the deal, and I think I've told you this before. In our system, nothing makes any sense. Nothing is the same. How many inches are there in a foot?
12.
How many feet are there in a yard? 3. How many yards are there in a mile? 1,760. All those things you have to memorize, and you're like, what? That's so weird and lame. How many teaspoons are in a tablespoon? 3. How many tablespoons in an ounce? 2. How many ounces are in a cup? 8. How many cups are there in a pint? 2. How many pints are there in a quart? 2. Oh my goodness. Maybe we're on a roll here. Maybe it's just 2. How many quarts are in a gallon? 4. Right? All this stuff. And what? In the metric system, everything is base 10. There's 10 millimeters in a centimeter. There's 10 centimeters in a decimeter. There's 10 decimeters in a meter. There's 10 meters in a decameter. There's 10 decameters in a hectometer. And there's 10 hectometers in a kilometer. Everything is base 10. And as long as you know the words milli, centi, deci, whatever the unit is, deca, hecto, and kilo, then you're good. You can do anything you want, and you can convert, and you can, it's so much easier. Do you understand what I'm talking about? It's so much easier. But, we don't do that. We're going to learn how to do it. Here's the deal. This is where I'm going to, you're going to have to do a little bit of, you'll have to look, when we do this homework assignment today, you'll have to look back and go, how much is a gram again? Because does anybody here really know how much a gram is? If you said, what's a gram? Like, does this pen weigh a gram? does this book weigh a gram? I mean, like, what is the, you know what I mean? We don't know. We're not used to this. And so that's kind of what we're doing today. Talking about distance. One good thing is that the distance thing is a little bit, we can wrap our brain around it because 1 meter is really close to 1 yard, right? It's close. It is not the same, right? It is not the same, but it's close. Okay? Like a meter would be the width of that door, right? I mean, you've seen a yardstick or a meter stick. You see my yardstick? It's about this long. That's a meter. So then, about how tall is the average man in the world? 2 meters. Just roughly 2 meters. Does that make sense? You know, like yardstick comes to here and then to here, 2 meters, right? The average baby's length would be about half a meter, right? You should just be able to take a meter, put it in your head, and go, okay, a meter's about this big. Now I can compare everything I want to that, and that should help. Remember this, it goes, when we're talking about meters, there are popular prefixes, okay? There is the millimeter. How big is a millimeter? It's the width of the lead of your pencil, right? The width of the lead of your pencil is a millimeter. It's tiny. It takes 10 of those to make a centimeter. A centimeter is about the width of your nail, right? So a millimeter is tiny. Centimeter is 10 times the millimeter. Does that make sense? And then, of course, you have the meter, which we already know is the size of the meter stick or the yardstick, right? And then the other common meter prefix is kilometer or a kilometer. And what does kilo mean? Does anybody know? Kilo means 1,000, right? A kilometer would be like from here to Bart. When we walk from here to Bart, it's about 1,000 steps. That's a kilometer. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Question there, Caleb? Now, so, how long, give me a ballpark, how long do you think this book is right here? Half a meter? So like this much is a meter? From here to here would be a meter? No. What should you use? Should you use meters to measure this? No. What would you use? You'd use centimeters, right? These guys, the width of your nail. How many of those? Well, let's see. In a yardstick, think of this. In a yardstick, there's 1 meter, right? How many centimeters are there in a yardstick? Centi means, how many cents are there in a dollar? 100. How many centimeters are there in a yard? In a meter? 100. There's 100. So, if you went like this, and this much is 100, right? The meter stick is 100 centimeters. Half of it would be 50. And so then you look at this, and you go, so half would be 50. Then this is probably about 20, 25, 30, something like that. Agreed? 20 centimeters. Does that make sense? Let's try and remember this. How many millimeters, the little tiny guys, are there in 1 centimeter? 10. Right? 10 of these little guys, and then one little guy like this. Right? Okay. Yeah, that's, when they ask you questions and they say what is this going to weigh, and you don't remember, go back to, look on page 416 right now, and look at the middle big box there that says metric unit of length, and it says kilometer about 2.5 times around an indoor track. A meter is about the height of a doorknob from the floor. A centimeter is the thickness of a CD case. You know what I'm talking about? The thickness of a CD case. And then the millimeter is about the thickness of the CD itself. Does that make sense? That should help you remember what these things are. Does that make sense? Use these boxes. The next one they start talking about is mass. We call it weight. right? They don't call it weight, they call it mass. Has a lot to do with density. I'm not going to get into that. That's science. We're just going to think that it's weight, okay? For our purposes, we just want to think of how much something weighs. Now, they use grams. The prefixes don't change. There's kilogram, there's gram, there's milligram. Does that make sense? In fact, the common ones, the only ones for gram that are common is kilo. What does kilo mean? 1,000, so 1,000 grams. Then there's gram, which is just the what it is. And then there's milligram. What is a milligram? What does milli mean? 1,000th, right? It's 1,000th. It also means 1,000, but in the small sense. It's 1/1,000th of a gram. So, a gram is the size or the weight of a small paperclip. That's 1 gram. Can you imagine how big then would a milligram be? 1/1,000th of that paperclip. Imagine cutting that paperclip into 1,000 equal pieces. And first of all, does that even seem possible? No. I mean, so then how small is a milligram? Almost microscopic. Would you agree? I mean, you need a microscope to see it. And yet, well, think of this. How many milligrams are there in 1 gram? 1,000. Have you ever heard of like a 500 milligram Motrin? An aspirin, something that's 500 milligrams? Or Tylenol, 500 milligram Tylenol or something? 500 milligrams. First of all, hold on. How many milligrams are there in 1 gram? 1,000. So if the pill is 500 milligrams, then what does that tell you about that pill? It's half the size of 1 gram. Does that make sense? It's half of a gram. And have you ever seen those pills? I mean, they're tiny, right? They're little guys. That's half of a gram. Make sense? A kilogram. It says the mass of 4 video cassettes. You know what's funny about that is that you guys even know what a video cassette is? It's like a VCR tape. You know, the big old block. You know, the block thing. You know, you guys are just barely old enough to even know what those things are. Do you think that in 10 years that the people who are just now born, will they have any idea what we're even talking about with a VCR tape? They won't even have a clue. Everything's going to be DVDs, right? I mean, like at least DVDs. And those are probably going to be like, DVD? What's a DVD? Because we're going to have something new, something else that's around, right? Right, whatever. Anyway, so a gram is a paperclip. A milligram is like the weight of your eyelash, right? I mean, like, how much does that weigh? When you grab an eyelash, you're like, oh, it's heavy. Right? I mean, like, it's nothing. It's actually, like, it's immeasurable. You can't even, like, we wouldn't even know that we had an eyelash on our list. Oh, man, my arm's a little bit heavy. What's going on? Oh, wow, there's an eyelash here. Whew, that's better. Now I'm free. Right? No, that would not be what you do. It's an eyelash. And then 4 video cassettes. Have you ever seen, like, a kilogram? I would say, like, a small book, you know, or one of your textbooks, like maybe your math textbook. That probably weighs more than that for sure. You know, your math textbook there would probably weigh 3 kilograms, 2 kilograms. Does that make sense? Okay. Remember, go back and look. Go back and look. And then there's capacity. We call it volume. You know, we were talking about like cups, ounces, you know, gallons. They use liters. And again, they do the same thing here, just kilo, liter, and milliliter, right? So kiloliter, liter, and milliliter. Whoa. Milliliter. A liter. The only thing that's saved us here in this country for me is that, have you ever seen a 2-liter bottle of soda? How big is the 2-liter bottle of soda? It's about this big. And how big is that? How many liters is that? 2. So imagine cutting that in half. That is a liter, right? You've actually seen a 1-liter bottle before. I know you have, right? I mean, like they're smaller, they're skinnier, you know, but they're still kind of tall, but they're skinny. Those are 1 liters. The 2-liter bottles are a little fatter, you know, but at least that gives you something to work with. Does that make sense? Imagine taking that 2-liter bottle, cutting it in half. You have a 1-liter bottle, and then you divide that into 1,000 parts. Wouldn't you say that's more like maybe a drop, right? Maybe a big drop, right? So if I said, hey, can I have a milliliter? If you ever came to me and said, hey, can I have a milliliter of your soda? I'd be like, sure, man. And then I'd give you like a little drop. Because it ain't nothing, right? Make sense? Milliliter is just tiny. It's like a raindrop. A kiloliter is 1,000 liters. So imagine taking, well, hold on, the liter, right, the skinny thing, 1,000 times, or the 2-liter bottle, how many times? 500 times, right? 500 of those 2-liter bottles. So give me something in life. What would be like a kiloliter? Huh?
Gas.
A gas tank?
Yeah.
No, wouldn't even be close. I would say maybe like one of those big, small kiddie pools. You know what I'm talking about? Like a kiddie pool. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not talking about a big old swimming pool. That would be way more than a kiloliter. Well, not way more than a kiloliter. But, I'm talking about like not one of those little tiny kiddie pools, but I'm talking about a really big kiddie pool. You know what I'm talking about? Like a hot tub. Right. Hot tub. Perfect. Make sense? Hot tub. Kiloliter. And that's probably not quite a kiloliter. But whatever. You know what I'm saying? You could tell that they probably don't use kiloliters very often. What do they probably mostly use? Liters or milliliters. Agreed? Does that make sense? People, if you know how to do that, then you are in good shape for this lesson. I mean, turn to page 418. They just start asking you, like, choose an appropriate metric unit of length. For like number 9, the width of a highway. In other words, how wide is the highway? What would you use for the width of the highway? Kilometers for the width? How wide it is? What would you use, Sladen? Meters, right? I mean, how many of these guys is the width of the highway? What about like the height of your desk? How high is this table? What would you use to measure this? I wouldn't use a meter. That's not accurate enough, right? What would you use to measure this height? Centimeters, right? This is probably like, I don't know, 20, or whatever, 90 centimeters or something, 91 centimeters. Make sense? Just go back and look at those charts if you need to do this assignment. Is there any other questions about this? Look at number 29. Number 29, they only give you one of these today. Tomorrow we start doing this more. Number 29, it says 1 milliliter equals how many liters? Listen, 1 milliliter. Let's go over this. 1 milliliter. How big is a milliliter again? How big is it? It's 1/1000th of a meter, right? Of a liter. Tell me what, it's one drop. Don't you agree? Didn't we kind of decide that it's like a drop? One drop. So then how big is one drop compared to liters? How much of a liter is it? It's 1/1000th of a liter. Does that make sense? It's 1/1000th of a liter. We've already said that. You can go back there and look and go, oh, milli means thousand, right? I think you guys can do this assignment. Hopefully you guys get it done in time. We don't have any homework. Maybe. I said hopefully you get it done in time.